Thank you. First of all, I'm just going to apologise in advance for walking up here with the end of a summer cold, but I'm not going to do a Theresa May. The front line don't need to worry. I've got my cough sweets ready, but I'm hoping I don't have to use them. So just a bit of brief background on the space. The space was set up in 2012 by the Arts Council of England and the BBC. It was set up as a commissioning capacity building agency around the area of digital to help arts and cultural organisations around the UK make the most of the opportunities to engage with audiences online and create quality, accessible digital content. It was also at that time set up as a web publishing portal, and it's just an interesting note to say that that was only 6 years ago, and at the time in 2012 that felt like that was the agency that was needed. The idea that the biggest barrier to kind of digital engagement was in fact how to publish work. Now 6 years isn't really long, and actually in that intervening period of time YouTube did exist at that point, but it certainly didn't exist with the proliferation of YouTubers running their own channels. Facebook certainly hadn't even conceived of the idea of running video. Instagram didn't exist. Twitter certainly wasn't the ubiquitous choice of communication of the President of the United States. So things have changed a lot. And the space has changed. So we are not a publishing destination. We no longer publish the artworks that we commission. We are there purely to help organizations produce projects and then distribute them. We have commissioned about 180, slightly over 180 projects to date, and we've reached online audiences, or the organizations we've commissioned have reached online audiences slightly in excess of 19 million around the world. So that means we've got a pretty unique data set and some insight into digital engagement and digital engagement with cultural projects in particular that we then use in our workshops and learning to share back in kind of case study based learning. And that's what the rest of the space team will be talking about this afternoon if you want to join those sessions. But first, before I say anything else, there's a very brief 1.5-minute trailer. So a few comments around that insight that we've gained over the last 2.5 years that I hope might prove useful. The first one is the big one, which is that word digital. It's actually a word that if I had the choice, I would probably ban. It doesn't mean anything. It's used by lots of people to describe something they don't entirely understand. It makes lots of other people feel that they don't understand something that they're being told to do. And you can't do digital however many times somebody says to you that you can or should be. So to start from a different point, we would say always start with audience experience and audience engagement. That's what you do and you will be doing in every other area of practice, and it should be the same online and looking at digital innovation. The digital landscape is evolving and chaotic, but if you start with a plan for who you want to talk to and what you want to say, that is the best way to go about it. And also we would say divide your thinking into two areas. One is content creation, and there's lots of conversation about content creation, but actually more significantly, you need to think of yourself or your organization as a digital publisher. And given the speed at which that landscape is evolving and changing, we would always recommend that you start with thinking about who you're going to be publishing to first. And I think there are many, many wonderful projects that people have been involved in over the years that look amazing, but if they haven't started with that grasp of who the audience might be and what kind of platforms they're going to be looking at that content on, they can be as beautiful as ever, but they're still not being seen by anybody. And I think secondly, within an organization, I think you need to always think about communicating a brand first. I know it's hard sometimes to think about that when you're actually engaged in a specific project, but individual projects in an online context really, really seldom cut through. What you need to do is to gain and retain audience engagement with you as a brand, and then hopefully that's something that becomes sustainable project to project. Another thing that I think you'll all find or are finding in organizations that you're involved in is that you need to make a really conscious and persistent effort to re-evaluate where and how digital is perceived within an organization. It's got to be central. It's got to be something that isn't the add-on. It's not something that the marketing and comms team are going to come along and generate at the end of a project. It has to be central to all of the activity. Now, we normally talk about our experiences through case studies. So I am now going to briefly pick out 3. I did have 4, but that was going to overrun. And actually talk about these are specific projects that I think are really interesting in the way that they've gone about engaging with their audiences and thinking about what that makes the digital artwork. The first one is a project called Playcraft Live. This was the first ever live play staged in Minecraft. It was a project that we commissioned from the Derry Playhouse in Northern Ireland. And what they did was to stage a production on stage in Derry and at the same time to have it being coded live on Minecraft. We began a process of scoping that project with them by identifying a teen writer, Alex Scarrow, with his very popular Time Rider series, and Alex wrote a kind of prequel, prelude episode of the Time Riders that was then turned into a stage play. What was happening whilst that was going on was that there was a cast of actors on stage in Derry, and they were the voices. Whenever they went into time travel mode, they then moved through into the Minecraft platform. That was being coded by puppeteers who had created avatars for each one of the cast members so that as they time traveled, they then appeared seamlessly on the Minecraft platform. Well, I say seamlessly. It's actually quite hard to put something into a narrative on Minecraft. For example, in Minecraft you can't sit down. Now normally in any kind of normal human interface you are going to need to sit down at some point. So that problem was got around by actually, you can dig holes in Minecraft, you can do that a lot. And if you dig a hole, you can drop a horse into a hole. And if you drop a horse into a hole, you can make somebody sit on the horse. Now they appear to be sitting down. Periodically, the horse gets bored and starts shifting about a bit, but nevertheless, it pretty much looks like they're sitting down. Equally, when you needed to make cars move around Times Square in New York, can't make cars drive around Times Square in New York, but you can make zombies walk round Times Square in New York, and you can put cars on their heads. So yes, so there were lots of interesting challenges for how to tell a narrative in Minecraft. But equally there was the challenge of how to get Minecraft followers and fans, and there are lots of them, 55 million players a month, but how to get them to identify this particular offering on the Minecraft platform. And we realized very early on that the importance here would be in the YouTubers who have Minecraft YouTube channels. What was fascinating to all of us was that I assumed that was just people who loved Minecraft, but no. There are many subsets within those communities. In particular, there are whole legions of them who are into role-playing, and actually they were the ones who absolutely loved what was going on in this particular way. We found one particular girl called Funny, F-U-N-N-E-H. I presume F-U-N-N-Y had already gone. She has a huge following, and I thought what would go on was that she would be watching the play on her channel, on her webcam, and they would be watching her watching it. But in actual fact, there was this massive interaction the whole way through the production. I've never seen comments on the kind of, watching it on YouTube, watching the comments panel on the right-hand side. The kids that were engaging with that were watching it and talking to one another so fast, you couldn't even read the questions they were posting. They were just whipping up the side of the screen. And they were talking about, why that character, why that, how have they made that happen? See, what you realized was you had a really reactive and responsive interface with those audiences. It's actually reached about just under 500,000 people have engaged with that online now, and just under 1 million, or 750,000 of people have looked at some of the CTAs that were involved in it as well. The second example is 100 Masters. This was a project we commissioned from Creative Black Country, an agency in the Midlands that celebrate artistic practice, professional and amateur. They came to us with the idea that they had a project called 100 Masters, celebrating 100 stories of people in the Midlands. And they wanted to promote that, and we suggested, okay, let's look at a Facebook page and let's look at 6 films optimized for Facebook. The very first film that went live on the Facebook page featured a woman called Caroline Jarawala, who makes mosaics out of recycled pottery. She's amazing, and she's very proud of the fact that she failed her art O-level, in fact got an E for it, she then had a kind of a moment some years later where she thought, no, it is what I want to do. How much do I need to earn? How much do I need to pay for my food? Right, okay, I will stop doing everything else and I will focus on my mosaics. So this film is incredibly engaging, and she is very engaging, but nevertheless, it went live on the Facebook page, and by the end of the first day had about 10,000 10-second views, so many more on the 5-second, but a 10-second view, which is really quite a long view. So about 10,000. By the end of the 5th day that film had posted, it was up to nearly 1 million 10-second views. So that is really significant engagement. By the end, in fact, at this moment in time, we're at 4.3 million for her. And we thought, what's going on here? This is really, really interesting. And the associate who'd been working with us on it then said, can I have a look at the analytics and see what's going on? And I said, yeah, brilliant, let's find out what's going on here. We assumed there would be some key influencers in there on Facebook or on Twitter. It wasn't that at all. It was craft communities, really small networks of craft communities of about 100 people. But the point about them is they're utterly geographically spread. So in that very first day, in those 10,000 people on that first day, those people were talking about it in Japan, in North America, in Africa, because craft communities don't recognize geographic boundaries. And you suddenly realize the power that any artist has to leverage their audience, and that those audience members are all sitting in the middle of networks. So I think we're only in the foothills of understanding how much that interactive engagement with our networks can actually work effectively. And the third and final example I'm just going to mention briefly is Rosie Kay Dance Company, who had a show called 5 Soldiers, which they'd worked with the Ministry of Defence because Rosie wanted to look at physicality in soldiering. The MOD had been very supportive of the project when it was being developed and when it was touring live. And when it came to doing a live stream of the show, which they came to us and asked about, there was then a conversation about where that would be streamed, whether that was going to be on their own YouTube channel, or, as our head of distribution said at the time, what about asking the British Army Facebook page if they would stream it? So at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, back in September last year, anybody on the British Army Facebook page discovered that they were watching an hour of contemporary dance. There were some surprised people. But what was really fascinating about it was that I would say of the people watching it, about a third of the comments were incredibly and immediately positive. People were incredibly emotionally drawn to this idea of talking about experiences in theatre of conflict in this way through dance. And about 2/3 were what you would expect in terms of an immediate, don't know what the MOD is doing, wasting its money on this, I wouldn't mind being deployed against her, etc., etc. But nevertheless, when I was watching those conversations going up on that page, I suddenly realized, yeah, but there are about 4 or 5 people participating in a conversation about the artwork they're watching, and they are watching it because they're talking about something that's going on in this minute, from minute to minute they were talking about what was going on. And at the end of that, I kind of thought, fine. Because actually you 5 have just watched 20 minutes of a contemporary dance performance, and you were never walking through the doors of a theatre to do that. And actually that's what art and culture are about. We're not about being liked and loved by everybody. We're about provoking debate, discussion, inspiration, all of those kind of things. And online, there is a huge opportunity to do that, and to do that to far more diverse and broader audiences. So, in summary, the things that I would give you as the headlines to take away. It's all about the audience, I'm sorry, but it is the best way to start to think online, because otherwise you will be building beautiful things that no one is going to look at. So, research the audience, where they are, what they're doing, what sort of content they're already engaging with, and how they are influenced and who they are influencing. Secondly, the big one to remember, take the rough with the smooth. Publishing your work online offers a huge opportunity to target audiences, including new audiences, but you need to be prepared to accept some very vocal feedback. It's not always good, it's not always fair, it's not always balanced. The online space facilitates that, and you need to be ready to handle that speedily, try and anticipate where that criticism may come from, and adapt and evolve to it. And that's my third one, which is, be ready to evolve and adapt. This landscape is changing all the time, but be ready to spot new trends. Do not assume that there is a given playbook way of doing anything. This world is transforming itself as we speak. From the beginning of my conversation to the end of it, it will have moved on already. Thank you very much.